Alright, so this is my submission to Deadpoolzilla, who asked me to participate in his Year of the Wolf Werewolf Movie-a-thon review. And my contribution to it is Ginger Snaps. This is made back in 2000 and has Catherine Isabelle in it, who has played various small roles throughout her career, and this is probably her biggest claim to fame. She is Ginger in this movie, the young lady, the young blonde lady on the right, and the one on her left is her sister Bridget, played by Emily Perkins, who, if some people sit there and look hard enough, will probably recognize her as young Beverly Marsh from the flashback scenes in Stephen King's It. We were asked to review our favorite movies. Unfortunately, I've already reviewed The Howling, which was my favorite movie sometime last year, and but I decided to pick this one because it's one of the most unique movies that I've seen. Unfortunately, werewolves, they do get attention in the media, but I don't think they get the proper attention, and there's not really a lot of movies to go on that are well made. But when they do get made, they try and very well manage to differentiate themselves from one another, and I think this is probably one of the most up-to-date, unique entries that I've seen for a werewolf movie so far. The story is basically in this movie that these two girls are outcasts in their local high school. They tend to dwell a little bit on the gothic side, but the big thing that really sets them up is that they are constantly taking pictures of themselves in these very gory and dead positions, and it's a hobby of Ginger's. Ginger is already sort of crazy at the start of this movie, and Bridget just kind of follows along with her. She's a bit of a weak personality. But there's an animal that's not shown at the start of the movie, and it's been going around the neighborhood in which they live, and it's been killing pets. And unfortunately, when these two were walking home through a park one night, it decides to attack both of them, and it manages to either bite or take a good swipe out of Ginger. And ergo, this begins her descent into lycanthropy. And of course, the werewolf that attacks him is shortly killed after it runs into the road in front of a van, and that's the end of it. But basically, this movie is more about the change that happens in Ginger and her slow descent into madness 2 months prior to Halloween. And that's a big thing with these horror movies, is they like to take place on Halloween, and this sort of builds up over 2 months with her change. Now, what's unique about these, the story in particular, is that both of these girls are a couple of late bloomers, and Ginger actually happens to be the one who is 16 and going through her period for the first time. Being a dude, I understand nothing about what a woman goes through when she's dealing with something like, or a young girl goes through when she's dealing with something like that for the first time. But apparently this movie has hit a real high note with a lot of pro-feminist type of women, and they probably say that it best portrays a woman going through those changes, and it's kind of a symbolic thing on Ginger's part. And even though there's not really a change happening to Bridget just yet in this movie, it represents 2 directions of which a woman can go throughout her changes. The bite manages to it does eventually cause Ginger to go mad, and I hate using the pun, but as the title states, she does snap at some point throughout this movie. She begins becoming much more promiscuous, and there's even kind of a small subplot given where she winds up infecting one of the dudes that she sleeps with. And I think this movie really does a terrific job, at least from my perspective, looking from the outside in on this condition. I think it's done well. And I also think it does well portraying these 2 teenage girls who are considered outcasts at their school. It does real well with their social setting in school, and it does real well commentating on what a dysfunctional family that these 2 come from. When I say dysfunctional family, their mom, who's played by Mimi Rogers, is just batshit crazy. I I would compare her to, I think Maggie White was her name. It was the name of the mother from Carrie. And she's not overly religious, but she's like constantly doting on her daughters, but she's more giving too much information of what they're going through as young women, and she constantly talks about this. Because like there's this really hilarious scene that takes place at the dinner table with the mother going on about this, and the two girls are sitting there trying to eat, and we get an idea what the dad's like, because the dad just sits there and takes this, and this just really says, you know, he's not really much of a, I think more of the adjective I'm looking for, and if women are listening to this, please excuse me, but it's more to demonstrate that he is pussy-whipped. And he's not really that big of a role in this movie. Very distinctly, the way that their mother is portrayed clearly shows where Ginger gets a lot of her craziness from. Not entirely in the same way as her mother, but just, you know, brazenly bold and sometimes borderline sociopath in this movie. A lot of the tropes about lycanthropy in this movie are completely chucked out of the window at some points. Case in point, when Bridget goes to a local pot dealer to try and, you know, understand what he has, or what his knowledge of drugs would be that would prevent a change of werewolfism. Because like she pretends that it's her going through the problem, but hiding the fact that Ginger is the one. So like the dude gives her like a silver navel ring, and Bridget takes it home and puts it on Ginger. Burns her a little bit, but doesn't really do nothing. And eventually we bring in sort of a wolf's bane like plant called monkshood, which can either slow the transformation, or if injected at the right time, could be a cure for it. What also takes place in this movie, now this movie is gory, sex is also a big theme of this movie, but there is no nudity in it. This is an R-rated film, but it's also a very mature film straight through. And you kind of have to be of the mentality to be able to sit down and, you know, take away some of the stuff from what it says, and which speaks a lot of how people are able to carry away the metaphors that this movie carries, by using the lycanthropy as the puberty metaphor. It does have two sequels. The second one, which uses the lycanthropy as a metaphor for drug abuse, and the third one, which uses it as a metaphor for family. And I think that's a really interesting thing. I also think that this movie handles the transformation aspect, or not really the transformation aspect, but, you know, how a person deals with a, you know, a very big change in their life. Certainly much better for a woman's perspective than you know, I think the closest thing that they came up with this for was an old movie called My Mom is a Werewolf, which that's more of a comedy than anything else, and I think the dark humor actually works to the message's advantage in this movie by portraying a lot of the scenes that are carried out. The lycanthropy can also be used as a head for madness in this movie because of Ginger's promiscuity. There's even a point that takes place before her final transformation into a werewolf, to such a point that she's gone mad that she offers herself to anybody, and there's even a point in particular where she even offers herself to her sister, which is disgusting to me. But, you know, the way that she plays it off is that the madness has accomplished her so much that she doesn't consider her and her sister related by blood anymore. Which, you know, it's disgusting, but I think it kind of works in portraying just how mad that she is towards the end of this movie. When it gets down to the actual transformation of the werewolf in this movie, it is exactly like the one that attacked her at the start of the movie. The appearance of the werewolf in this movie is, if anybody saw Dusk Till Dawn, and you remember that one vampire that George Clooney cut the head off of, and then the body turned into the giant rat, picture a werewolf, like a hairless werewolf is basically what they are. And if you get into the sequels, the longer you stay a werewolf, you will get fur eventually, and it's sort of like a newborn transition, sort of like a wolf pup, basically. I also think that the werewolves like particularly the way they move in this movie is kind of interesting, because normally you have a transition in between a bipedal wolf, which would walk on two legs like the ones in The Howling, or you would have the ones that walk on four legs, like the one from An American Werewolf in London, or from something else I'm thinking of. I would say maybe Wild Country, like the giant werewolf that was in that one. But these actually move more like gorillas. They have the bent backward legs, but they have like these really heavy front legs that also kind of act like forearms. And they look like they're kind of walking around like a gorilla, except that they're not dragging their fists. It's just how big the arms have become. And I think that's and they actually use actual animatronic puppets in this movie, which is actually something that works well in its favor. There is no CG in this whatsoever. And I think this is a really well-made movie. It does have 2 sequels, which I will review after this. We were only supposed to submit 1 movie to the Year of the Werewolf, so this is my submission to it, and I'm just going to review the 2 sequels on my own after this. But if you're looking for a good werewolf movie, if you like a good feminist message, or probably you just like to have the shit scared out of you and dark humor and gore about, I recommend that you check out this movie.